Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by the newest member of the On Texas Football family, my esteemed colleague and good friend, my man Jeff Howe is joining us. We continue our breakdown of the weekly previews, if you will, of the Longhorns' upcoming opponents. We're on week 2. We'll be talking about San Jose State coming up here and break that down. And this preview is courtesy of our good friends over at Von Lane, vonlane.com. We'll tell you more about them coming up a little bit later on. But Jeff, looking at this San Jose State team, I can say I was actually a little surprised by some of the strengths of this San Jose team from last year and how those will translate to this season. But last year they were closer than and nobody really watched San Jose State. They were closer in a lot of those games. They were 7-6. They were closer in a lot of those losses than a lot of people would realize in Ken Nui Matalolo's first year. I say that slow so I don't screw it up. But 7-6, they had 2 overtime games they lost. They were up 14-0 in Boise State. They ended up getting slapped around, I think, 42-21. They were up 2 touchdowns on them. They were up on UNLV, actually, at halftime. Ended up losing that game. They lost a 54-52 shootout to Washington State on the road. There was also a 6-point loss to Colorado State. So in the first year for Nui Matalolo, I mean, I got to tell you, that's exactly kind of where you want to be, a team that's fighting in every game, competitive in every game. I think a lot of people thought offensively this team was going to struggle last season because he was coming from a service academy, and how, was he going to try to bring that offense with him? He did not. He brought in an offensive coordinator, Craig Stutzman, and they basically call it the spread and shred offense. It was one of the most explosive offenses in the country last season. They lost a lot of those pieces, but Nui Matalolo really did, I think, breed a lot of optimism among that fan base that, oh, no, he was definitely the right guy for the job because he's ready for them to be a progressive, modernized program, at least offensively.
You look at Ken Niumatalolo's track record, Rod, and just how long he was at Navy, running the flex bone and the option. And he got there in 2002. As the assistant head coach and the O-line coach.
He was playing back then.
Yeah. And 2022 was his last year at Navy. Didn't end well, 3 straight losing seasons. We had 2 where they won 11 games. I mean, if you watch college football from a periphery, kind of the way you described San Jose State last year, that was pretty much the way you could describe Ken Niumatalolo's Navy teams. Like, they probably weren't going to beat anybody on a national stage, but week in, week out, they're going to be competitive. They're going to be disciplined. And I'll tell you what, like, when you think about that offense, and I think this just shows you kind of how he's evolved. He did spend 1 season at UCLA in 2023. He was there with Chip Kelly as the tight ends coach, and then got the San Jose State job. When you think of Ken Niumatalolo, you think of those Navy teams. You think, oh, yeah, it's the option, and they run the football, and they're downhill. They were the worst rushing offense in the Mountain West last year. On the flip side, though, no offense had more passing plays of 10-plus yards or 20-plus yards in the Mountain West than San Jose State did last year. So this is not like just the Navy offense being run on the West Coast. Like, Ken Niumatalolo's doing something. They call it the spread option, but they're not messing around, Rod B. They will throw the football.
Yeah, unfortunately for them, they lost they had one of the best wide receiving corps in the country. They lost 2 of those guys from last year. First of all, the Triple Crown winner. He was actually the leader in college football in receiving yards and receptions and touchdowns. Nick Nash, who was just incredible for them. 104 receptions, 1,382 yards, 16 touchdowns. I believe he's on the Falcons right now. Went undrafted, surprisingly. And then Justin Lockhart was another player for them, almost at 1,000. I think he was at 980, something like that. Both of those guys gone. They also lost a tight end. One of the guys who was expected to be potentially a starting tight end for them. They lost one of their tight ends to the transfer portal as well, Jacob Stewart, who transferred to Louisville. So they lost a lot of those weapons. They do bring back their 2 starting running backs, but as you said, they didn't run the ball very much. I mean, they were 133rd in rushing attempts in the country. They brought back those 2 guys, and they actually may be pretty good. Floyd Chalk is one of the guys' names, and I think it's Jabari Bates is the other running back's name. And they bring back, I think, some of the interior offensive linemen, the center and a couple of guards. They're a little young and inexperienced at the tackles. And one of the quarterbacks who was competing last year for that starting spot ended up losing that job, Emmett Brown. He ended up transferring as well. He transferred out. And now they do have what they believe is their starting quarterback in Walter Egat, who was one of the guys who was competing last year for that spot. He's returning 6'3", about 223 pounds. Emmett Brown transferred to Coastal Carolina. So, at least they got a quarterback who's well-versed in this system. He knows it really well. They do have to replace all those pieces on the outside.
And let's be real. They're going to open up the season with Central Michigan at home. And then they get to come to Texas for an 11 a.m. kick. Keep him on the date, folks. This is September 6th, and it's 11 a.m. kick at DKR. Get the IVs ready, man, because they're going to need some fluids to get through that day, right? It's probably going to be hot. It's going to be sweaty. And I think for Sark, you always hear the cliche that a team's biggest improvement is from, the first game to the second game. Well, we talked about the Ohio State game in terms of when you leave Columbus and you put on the tape that night or the next day, you're going to figure out what all your blemishes are. I mean, they were there for the world to see against Ohio State. Now you get to go fix things. And sorry, San Jose State, but you're the team Texas gets to try and fix stuff against in 2025.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. That's a good point. Yeah, that's one of those games where I feel Texas kind of piling it on in that game, as you pointed out. And they have a lot of advantages, and we'll talk about a few of those as we continue. But some of the pieces that are supposed to replace that really spectacular wide receiving core they had last year, they brought in a Purdue transfer, Leland Smith, big receiver, 6'4", about 215. I mean, he's big. Sacramento State transfer, wide receiver and kick returner, Nick Scudero. He was really productive at Sac State, 53 receptions for over 600 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. Matthew Coleman was really good for them in the bowl game. Nick Nash, I believe, didn't play in the bowl game, so they put Matthew Coleman in there. First time he was in the slot predominantly for them. Really productive, over 100 yards receiving, 119 actually on 12 receptions and a touchdown versus South Florida in the bowl game. So he'll be, I think, a featured piece in the passing game as well. They also had a Malachi Riley, an Arizona transfer. They're really hoping the transfer portal is going to help them plug a lot of holes in terms of the weapons for Walker Egat, and hopefully, that's something for them that they can really start to transition into this offense really well, because these are not a lot of guys, except for Matthew Coleman, not a lot of guys who have already been well versed in the offense that they're going to be bringing back next season.
Yeah. Well, let's be real too, Rod. If you can't run the ball against Texas, if you can't establish any semblance of a run game, man, it's go look at Colorado State last year. I mean, that was a pretty solid Colorado State team from the same league, and they couldn't run the ball. Braden Fowler, Nicolosi, they got behind the chains. It turned into a throw game, and it was a really, really long day for Colorado State at DKR. I think this one probably going to go the same way. I think the interesting thing is, though, this starts the run that we talk about, the 3-game non-conference run that I've been talking about all off season, all spring, and I'll continue to talk about it throughout the summer. This is going to be Sark's opportunity to build depth. And coming out of the Ohio State game, you're probably going to have a select few freshmen that you probably trust coming out of that game. If you've got freshmen on the field against Ohio State, I don't care which side of the ball they're on, those are guys that the staff trusts. So whether if it's Justice Terry and Lance Jackson on the defensive line, or if it's any of those freshman receivers, maybe like James Simon at running back, I would expect the snap counts to increase exponentially. And this is going to be one of those games where your regulars, you may see, if things go according to plan, you may see Arch Manning for maybe that first series of the second half, just to, kind of you've got a great game situation right there, just to get the blood warm a little bit. And then it's probably Trey Owens' game from that point. You're probably not going to see much of Anthony Hill or Colin Simmons or Michael Taft or Manny Muhammad after halftime. And that's the way it should be. This is going to start that run where Sark is going to start building depth, even if it's not, hey, you only beat them like 42-0 instead of, 70-0 or whatever, but you're building depth. It's not about running it up against San Jose State. It's about making sure you've got enough bodies to get through an SEC schedule, go maybe win a conference championship, and then compete in the CFP.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think it'll be a good test, though, because if the kind of the principles of the offense, if they actually still translate for 1 year to the next, and we don't know that because it was Nuimitalo's first year, Nuimitalo's first year there with him. But if it does, they were really explosive. They loved taking shots down the field. They were top 15 in explosive play rate. They were top 20 in explosive plays overall. That'll be a good test for the Texas defense. And even though they threw the ball a lot, they were bottom 5 in rushing, as you pointed out. They were actually top 5 in passing yards, 3rd in passing attempts. So talk about pass heavy. That would be an understatement for this crew. But they only allowed 12 sacks. They were top 10 in sacks allowed. They were top 25 in tackles for loss allowed, like negative plays allowed overall. It was a really good performance by their offensive line from a pass protection perspective. Now, run blocking, that's an issue. Hopefully for them, I think bringing back a lot of their interior offensive linemen. They got Joseph Harbert, he's in center for them, who's a really physical run blocker. Hudson Mesa, who's a started for center for them, but then also transitioned over to guard for him. Tyler Chen is another guy that moved from guard to center. So they got a lot of guys with versatility on the inside and experience on the outside. Unfortunately for them, they do not have that luxury. They got a lot of inexperience on the outside and youth on the outside at the tackle position. And Texas, unfortunately for unfortunately for San Jose State, they don't necessarily have experience there. And that's where Texas has probably some of the most experience in the country at the edges now, and the most talent probably of any group in the country when it comes to edge defenders. So that should be somewhere I think Texas will be tested to see if they can actually get to the quarterback EGAT, even though they have a really good built-in pass protection as a way to insulate the quarterback by getting the ball out of his hands pretty quickly.
Yeah, so just for whatever it's worth, San Jose State last year, they were 7-6, 3-4 in the Mountain West. They did lose to Colorado State. So if you're trying to look at maybe like opponents to get an idea of, okay, what type of team, what caliber team is this? They went on the road to Fort Collins, lost a 7-point game to Colorado State last year. That's a Colorado State team, right, that damn near ended up playing for the Mountain West Championship. Like Jay Norvell had a pretty good team last year. So again, they're a competitive team, but I think what you just said there about their passing offense, the only way they're going to be able to negate the Texas pass rush is just getting the ball out quick. Like it's not, I wouldn't expect a ton of, hard play action, a bunch of, long developing pass plays. It's going to be get the snap, get rid of it quick. Don't give Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill and Trey Moore and these pass rushers a chance to get a beat on what you're doing. And try to get yourself in third and manageable situations. It's easier said than done against Texas because, man, if you're living in second and long, third and long, then you got no chance to even think about making the game competitive, let alone do you have a chance to make it interesting in the second half.
Yep, totally agree with you. Jumping to the defensive side for them, they did have some liabilities, I think, on the defensive side, but they did do some things really well, though. I mean, they were top 5 in takeaways last season, 5th in takeaways with 28. So Texas had 31. They were second in the country. Notre Dame led the country with 33. They had 28 takeaways. They had 21 interceptions last season. Unfortunately, the transfer portal, give it then and take it away. A lot of those guys who are playmakers for them in that secondary to make those plays actually left via the transfer portal. DJ Harvey at cornerback, he was going. He had 4 interceptions, 6 PBUs, transferred to USC. Michael Dansby, 2 interceptions, 7 PBUs, transferred to Arizona. Robert Rahimi, 82 tackles, 5 interceptions. He transferred to SMU. He just lost a lot of playmakers in that secondary, unfortunately. So I don't know if they can replicate that, but it does show you they're a very high-risk, high-reward defense. They take a lot of chances. You go look at their tackles for loss. They had 93 tackles for loss last season. That was a top 20 number in the country. So it didn't have a lot of sacks. They only had like 25 sacks, but they do force a lot of negative plays. So that's what they're about. Forcing negative plays, high risk, high reward. They gamble, they roll the dice, but it pays off for them. And that's what Texas in this game you got to avoid. Remember, Texas last year, they were actually one of the worst teams in the country at giveaways. Turns out both of these teams are really bad at giveaways. I went and looked at it. Texas was 130th in giveaways last season. They were 132nd. They had 29 turnovers last season. Texas had 26. So both of these teams were two of the worst teams in the country at taking care of the football last season. But getting back to their defense was actually one of the elite defenses at taking the football away. So was the Texas defense. But both of those were kind of negated by how often they turned the football over. We'll see if that can translate from year to year as well with this defense by Derek Odom. He's the defensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a guy that he was actually with Kyle Whittingham at Utah from 05 to 07. He was at SMU for a long time, 2008 to 14. Spent some time at Oregon State, and he's been at San Jose State since 2017. So they've got a system. They got a scheme on defense. Like you said, Rod, it's high risk, high reward. Here's what stood out to me, though. I thought this was interesting. And, again, we'll see what the red zone offense for Texas looks like in Columbus. You're going to get a really good test right out of the gate on how much your red zone offense has improved. San Jose State last year, they were top 40 in the country in red zone defense. So it's not like you're just going to be able to run over them. They'll put up some resistance. They'll put up a fight, at least based on what their numbers were last year. So, again, it's going to be a really good challenge. We talked about this on one of the live streams. Somebody asked to say, if you're looking at a player stat line, a player stat line could kind of tell you how the season is going to go. Whose would it be? And I started thinking about Mason Shipley, coming in as the transfer kicker from Texas State. I said, Rod, I don't want Mason Shipley to win the Grozo Award. I want him to be really accurate, but have him be like, 12 of 12, 12 of 13, and most of those kicks are like 35 plus. I don't need Mason Shipley to win the Grozo Award making like 30-something field goals in a year, because you want Texas to score touchdowns in the red zone, not settle for field goals. So this is going to be one of those games where, yeah, if they're having trouble in the red zone, obviously you're going to worry about it. You're going to worry about it, number one, because it's been an issue. But, yeah, this and two, because the opponent, because it's San Jose State. But they could make Texas work a little bit in the red zone. So really, really good test for Arch and Sark in this offense.
Yep, they were a pretty good red zone defense, good at taking the football away, really opportunistic, really bad on third down, 121st on third down last season. So that's something Texas could take advantage of potentially. Some of the guys to watch out for on the D-line, they're just going to be outmatched, of course, with Texas big humans. But Quincy Likio is one of the guys to look out for. Gava Faga, I love that name, by the way. Sounds awesome. Sounds like a villain on Star Wars. He's one of their nose guards, interior D lineman. The linebacker position is loaded for them. They got potentially 5 starting linebackers. I'm not BSing. They returned Jordan Pollard. He was their leading tackle last year, 115 tackles. I'm sure I'm going to screw this name up. I apologize. Tanyela Latu. He was named a captain. He was 4th in tackles with 70. They got Noah McNeil Franklin, who started games at the end of last year. He had 53 tackles, 4 tackles for loss. Ethan Powell's another linebacker, 5 tackles for loss, 43 tackles last season. They have Brady Van Bennekum. I heard that he had a great spring. Apparently, looked really good. He had 2 interceptions in the spring game, and has been an absolute menace in spring. So they're saying their linebacker position is maybe one of the best, not only in their conference. If it works out, maybe one of the best in the country potentially. Just a really good group of veteran linebackers who played a lot of football for them. That's something to watch for Texas. But the secondary, it's just going to be, them trying to put a lot of new pieces in place because they lost a lot. I think the mentality and the philosophy will remain the same. They'll be really aggressive. I'm not sure they have that kind of talent at San Jose State. Even getting guys, they got some young guys they like. They got some guys coming back too. I got to throw this out there. That 2 guys to look out for. Isaiah Rivas, really good player for them, 72 tackles last year. He's returning at safety. Jalen Appellate Williams, he was a decent player for them as well in the secondary, but for the most part, they lost a lot of talent in the secondary to USC and to Arizona and to SMU. About really good football programs. I don't know how they replace that at San Jose State. That's going to be a problem matching up against the passing game of Texas.
Yeah, you also got to remember going from 23 to 24, they lost Javion Cole to Texas. Yeah. So they have put out some pretty good DBs, and also don't forget too. Former Longhorn Larry Turner Gooden, he's still on that San Jose State roster in the secondary. So 12 games last year, the stat sheet wasn't exactly filled up, but we'll see where he is in the pecking order once they get to town. But it's going to be a long, hot day for the Spartans, Rod. Like
Yeah.
Start hydrating now, because you probably need. Anybody that's been to DKR for an early September 11 a.m. kick knows it is not for the faint of heart, man.
Yeah, no, it feels like the devil's den around that time, man. It's brutal. All right, thank you, Jeff. Let's thank our sponsor, our friends over at Vaughn Lane. You got to get from one city to another in this great state of Texas, trying to get to Houston and Dallas and San Antonio, Austin. It can be a bit of a hassle. It's a toss-up. Do you deal with the airport chaos and hope your flight isn't delayed, or do you brace yourself for hours behind the wheel, battling traffic and road rage and losing an entire day of productivity? Now there's a third option, and it's better in each and every way. It's Vaughn Lane. You arrive at a luxury hotel terminal, no TSA lines, no long-term parking lots, just a seamless boarding experience that takes minutes, not hours. You settle into a plush leather seat, a hot towel, pillow, and blanket are at arm's reach. Your attendant offers complimentary snacks, beverages, and on select trips, a full meal if you like. And if you need to relax, you can lean back and enjoy the ride. And if you want to stay productive, there's high-speed Wi-Fi and power at every seat. So while you're unplugging or powering through, the Vaughn Lane team, they're monitoring traffic in real time using smarter routes and efficient detours to keep your trip smooth and on schedule. And now is the perfect time to plan your fall travel. Booking is open through September. So whether you're headed to a college football game, a weekend getaway, or a business trip that needs to be done right, Vaughn Lane makes the journey part of the reward. Vaughn Lane serves Austin, Dallas, Houston, Fort Worth, San Antonio, and in the Southeast, Atlanta, Nashville, and Memphis as well. Visit VaughnLane.com. That's VONLANE.com. And use the code OTF25 to save $20 off your first ride with Vaughn Lane. That's Vaughn Lane, elevated regional bus transportation. Thank you very much to our friends at Vaughn Lane for sponsoring our previews here, our way too early previews for the Longhorns. And we'll be back next week with the week 3 preview for the Longhorns. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate all of your expertise and knowledge. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. He's the real MVP, twisting and tweaking the dials. And thank you guys out there for joining us. And for Jeff and for Matthew, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.